Resuming debate, the Honourable Member for Don Valley East.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. And it's a real pleasure to be able to speak in this House. And I want to take this opportunity to thank the people of Don Valley East for providing me with the privilege to be able to speak in this House. My community is a remarkable community. It's very diverse. It's diverse culturally. It's diverse in education, diverse in professions. There's so many differences in our community, but despite all of these differences, we have the same value set. We believe in values that combined us. Values like hard work pays off, or education is and should be a top priority. Values like if someone is sick, we come together and we pool our resources to make sure they get the help they need. And making sure that our country remains clean and our environment's protected. But the most important value that I've picked up over the years is that when we stick together, we're actually stronger and we're better for it. These are the values that make Canada work. It makes my community work. And I have the opportunity through my community supporting me to come into this chamber through the democratic process and to reflect those values in this House. And we put those values into actions, and we do that by making decisions. So each of us has a choice we can make every single day. It's about choice. When you really cut away from everything else, at the end of the day, we are here, we are sent to make decisions, to make choices for our community. And this is an important word, choice, when it comes to democracy. It's an important word in this House. And every day those actions we take, those choices we make, eventually they set a tone and they become government policy and they become law. So we're here to make decisions and to make choices. And when your choice is not aligned with your community, you know what happens, Madam Speaker. Your community eventually will boot you out of office. So we have an opportunity here to align with our community. And I'll tell you this, when it comes to the fall economic statement, I am very aligned with where my community's at, and my community is aligned with the position I'm taking in this House. Madam Speaker, I am proud to support Bill 32. And I'll tell you why. Because I grew up in a community where, despite all of these big differences, we worked together, we stuck together. It's a community that has many different types of housings, from low-cost rent housing to subsidized housing, Toronto community housing. There's low-cost condominiums. There's an array of different styles of homes, and we all live together. And we know that some people struggle in my community. I grew up in a neighborhood where it wasn't, you would see young people come to school without lunches. Growing up, seeing young people not getting the support that I got at my house, and you pick up on these things, you see these things. I come from a neighborhood where many of the young men I grew up with didn't graduate high school. And by the time I was 21, Madam Chair, or Madam Speaker, by the time I was 21, I must have known at least a dozen young men who were murdered in my community through street violence. So you pick up on these things and you take note. And the reason I originally ran to be a school board trustee when I was, almost 30 years old was because of these reasons. I saw inequity in society, and I wanted to take those values that were instilled in my community and look for ways to bring it into forums like this. And I saw many young people with limited opportunities. And I know that we have an opportunity in assemblies like this to create opportunity for people by the decisions and choices that we make. So I was pretty lucky. I had a family, my mother and father were there, aunts and uncles, cousins, lots of friends around me. I got to go to school and I got my lunch packed for me. I came home, there was a warm meal. I was a lucky person. Then, I didn't have to think about, the next meal. I didn't have to think about being safe at night. I didn't have to think about those things. So I had the opportunity to look for opportunity. And, it was because of government programs like student assistance that I got to go off to university. I was the first person in my family. In fact, on my whole street, there was 2 guys who went off to university, and I was one of them. And I was lucky to have that opportunity, and it was because of government programming. And You know, there were times growing up when there was one time when our family was threatened to be thrown on the street by the landlord, and we went to the legal aid clinic, and because of those government programs, my family was safe. One of my first jobs I ever got was subsidized by the government, like the student summer job program, where I could actually go and get some experience and take that experience and grow. So it's because of those programs, Madam Speaker, that I was able to continue go off to university and to serve my community as an MPP, as a member of Parliament here in the House of Commons. So at the end of the day, we are opportunity makers. That's what we do in this House. We create opportunity for people. We create opportunities to make life better for people, to make opportunities more abundant to people. And we do have choices. And eventually, those decisions we make here, the tone that we set, again, there's a tipping point where it becomes government policy. So I'm proud to stand in the House of Commons and to support Bill C-32 because I know it's going to create more opportunities for people who need those opportunities. Now, we just came from a pretty rough financial situation and COVID. You know, the financial sector on this planet was shocked. COVID changed the entire trajectory of how we do many things, and economically, it's been very challenging for Canadians and for the Canadian government. You know, back in 2009, when we went through an economic challenge here in Canada, the Conservatives were in power, and Stephen Harper and the Conservatives had choices to make back then. And they decided to take a different route than the route we're taking today. The route that they took is they cut programs. Actually, they just sent out a blanket statement saying, let's cut 10 to 15% from ministries. Just cut what you can from departments. They cut literacy programs that were aimed for adult learners. And they did something which shocked Canadians during that time period. They actually changed the rules around eligibility for seniors when it comes to their pension, moving it from 65 to 67. So here we are today in the House of Commons, and a bill's being put forward by this government, by the finance minister, to look for ways to strengthen people by providing more opportunity. And the Conservatives have a choice. They have a choice to support people, which I would say, without a question, is the greatest resource we have as Canadians, is the people that make up this great country. So when you see Conservatives voting against things like dental care, you know, imagine a $1,200 dental care program for the kids, the kind of kids that I grew up with, the kind of kids, like I would have been eligible for that program when I was a kid. The Conservatives are going to vote against that. I presume they will be voting against this bill, C-32, the way they've been speaking. You know, $500 subsidy for some of the people who need help, who rent apartments. You know, the Conservatives are going to vote against that. You know, we talk about programs like childcare that can save families, you know, $10,000 a year. Conservatives will vote against that. In fact, in this bill, you know, the elimination of interest, Madam Speaker, the elimination of interest on student loans. I had a student loan. The only way I could get to Carleton was to take out a loan that ended up costing me $57,000, and I paid it back, and I paid it back, and I was proud to pay it back because it provided me with an opportunity to eventually be in a place like this with my fellow colleagues representing my community. So we all have choices, and you know, it was Nelson Mandela. It was Nelson Mandela who Mr. Speaker, when I was a very young man, I got to see Nelson Mandela speak in the House of Commons. I was a very young man, and I got to hear him speak. But I came across a quote yesterday. I was just you know, learning a bit more about choice and politics in general, and I came across this great quote. He said, "May your choices reflect your hopes, not your fears." And I think the Conservatives need to stand up and align themselves by choice with their communities and stop using fear as the motivator to separate people, but use hope, which I think Bill C-32 does. to bring people together and to create opportunity and hope so the next generation of young Canadians and Canadians today have the opportunity, Mr. Speaker, to build a better country. Thank you very much.